Debate. The Honourable Member for Edmonton West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. To start, I want to say I'm splitting my time with my honourable colleague, the member from Battle River Crowfoot. Now, I'm pleased to be talking today regarding the study in question, which was Kevin, at the time when I first started doing some work on public accounts, he was the chair of that that committee as well. Now, the Greening Government report that we're chatting about today, it's actually perfect timing for a lot of reasons, and I will comment on some of the timing as I go. One of the reasons is it's great timing because in public accounts, we're actually studying the green hydro sham, and I'll call it a sham because there's various issues that have come up about the government actions, and I'll cover them later in my talk. Now, on the Greening Government, just a couple points, just to give some background. The Treasury Board launched the Greening Government strategy back in 2017 with the ultimate goal to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Now, just commenting from the Auditor General report, says the government indicated that it committed to leading by example in both domestic and global transition to a lower carbon economy. And again, I get back to the great timing because we just heard from the Environment Commissioner comment that the government has not once yet achieved a single one of its environmental goals. And yet we have here the public audit or the public accounts looking at a report stating that the government's goal was to be a domestic and global leader in the transition to a lower carbon economy. A fail. An interesting comment from the Auditor General is that the government, federal government, is responsible for 3% of all GHG emissions, which is larger than any single corporation or company in Canada. And you would think that this government would be actually work to reduce their own GHG emissions instead of driving out of business so many companies across Canada. Instead, we see their goal is to reduce GHG by eliminating revenue-producing companies, especially in Alberta, but at the same time growing their own emissions. Now, from the findings of this report, the Auditor General comments, 5 years into the strategy, Treasury Board's efforts to reduce emissions were not as complete as they could have been. They were able to, especially considering their statement that they were going to be a global leader in transitioning. So here we have the Auditor General pointing out the government is all talk and no action on this issue. Further into the report, they comment, we found that overall reported results from Crown corporations were neither included on the Secretariat's website nor aggregated. And why is this important? Again, I talk about timing. We talk about the government, Treasury Board doesn't cover Crown corporations. Well, we, of course, have the green scam going on right now with the SDTC, where we have a $1 billion Liberal Green slush fund, where we know millions have been diverted to companies without any oversight. And here we have the Auditor General herself commenting that the Treasury Board has provided no oversight on these programs with Crown corporations. She continues, in our view, the Treasury Board Secretariat, the government, also left out important context out of its reporting, such as an overview of government key sources of emissions, key activities undertaken by the government, opportunities, risk, and related mitigation measures likely to adjust the government ability to implement strategy over the remaining 28 years, and information how the strategy supported the United Nations 2030 agenda. So they didn't know what they were doing, they didn't know what they were going to achieve, they didn't know how they were going to achieve it, and they did not know when they were going to achieve it. Pretty much sums up this government in a lot of areas, but especially on the green front. Auditor General generally also concludes, we found the Greening Government strategy did not contain sufficient detail about some important commitments. Additional information would give parliamentarians and Canadians a clear picture of what is to be accomplished, including the government's plan to how to transition. Which is very clear throughout this report there was a lack of transparency in their reporting. And then she finishes up with commenting about limited risk management. And again, this is important because at this time in the Ethics Committee and other committees, we're talking about the $1 billion slush fund. No oversight, no risk management on the government's programs or spending. We found the Treasury Board did not identify how it would consult departments on their risk in order to come up with accurate plans. 8 of 27 departments create emission reduction plans for government programs, and that's all. Now, I want to get to what I talked about, the SDTC, and it's important because greening government, Auditor General has made it clear the Treasury Board, which is responsible for the oversight, has not provided the oversight. They failed on oversight of Crown corporations, which the SDTC is, and they have not provided the risk management or the risk mitigation. Now, the SDTC, in a comment in their mission statement, their investments translate to economic and environmental benefits. Now, we've heard earlier the environmental commissioner stated the Liberals have not achieved one environmental or one target from their environmental plans. But I have to agree or disagree. The Liberals have achieved one plan, and that's stuffing taxpayers' money into connected Liberals through the SDTC. We've looked up donations from the directors of the SDTC. Tens of thousands have flown into the Liberal government coffers. At the same time, they're flowing millions out the door to be unaccounted for. The SDTC also says, we hope Canadian companies develop and deploy sustainable technologies by delivering critical funding. That's those wondering, the SDTC stands for Sustainable Development Technology Canada. Also in their mission statement, committed to full transparency. Committed to full transparency. That's also very similar to the government saying open by default. Both are not true. And we've seen that we've had to fight in committee to get information. I want to read a couple comments from the whistleblower on the SDTC about some of the money wasted. There's a lot of sloppiness and laziness. There's some outright incompetence. And you know the situation is just kind of untenable at this point. Actually, this seems very similar to the Rypan scandal. Well, that's $54 million. I think this is going to be much larger. The minister is going to flip out when he hears the stuff, and he's going to want an extreme reaction, like shut it all down. I will note that the minister found out, I think, in March, and here we are in November before we actually see some action from this government. It's unlikely that certain members of the board, remember this board that funneled tens of thousands of donations into the Liberal coffers, are on board. Executives are going to be able to continue to serve. Like they're kind of lost their confidence. So really the discussion will be the mechanisms for getting them out. Continuing pretty well prepared to talk him off the ledge, like, Minister, that's a bad idea. We've got other ideas. So here we have Auditor General report, greening government very clearly laying out problems. Back in 2022, a year ago, we knew there were problems with Crown corporations. March, we had whistleblowers come forward about waste of taxpayers' money, and here it is November, and we still have not seen actions. It's very clear that Canadians cannot afford this costly government after 8 years, and after 8 years, it's very clear the environment cannot afford this government either. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.